Welcome back. So what I want you to do is we're going to take, once again, we're going to take this idea of this brain dump, but I just want you, I'm going to let you use your journal, but I want you to write as much stuff down over the next 60 seconds as you can as it relates to volume of these three shapes. Okay, you can write whatever you want down right here for the next 60 seconds. Go. About 30 seconds. About 5 seconds. Okay, let's come back together. So your notes are going to be right here on page 159 and 160. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through some of the things that I know that I want you to remember and some of the common mistakes that we see time and time and time again. And the first thing I want you to remember is that, and the most important thing, is that you need R. What does R stand for? Radius. Absolutely. So let's write that here, radius. And let's just draw a circle. And let's illustrate that the radius is from the center of the circle to the outside edge. The second thing I want you to remember is that there's going to be this special capital letter that we're going to need to find. Anybody remember what that stands for?
The area.
What area?
Right, not just the base and not the area, but the complete sentence. Great job. It's the area of the base. And anytime you see a capital letter, it's capitalized for a reason. It's capitalized because it has its own formula. In this case, that formula is pi r squared. The reason it's pi r squared is because all of these shapes down here, what do they all have in common? Not a square, circle, right? Because their base is all a circle. Okay? So we're going to use this formula anytime we see capital B. And then the last thing is use your HEIGHT, your height line, first. When you're putting things in your formula, use that height line first. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to practice. We're going to practice just three of the most common shapes here: cylinder, cone, and sphere. So let's go ahead and let's look on our STAR material guide. We have these out around the room, and so I want you to go ahead and put your name on this one. You're going to keep this for the next so many weeks until we actually go and take the test. So make sure your name is on it. You're going to keep this. And let's go down here. And the first thing I want you to do is, because we're talking about volume of a cylinder, cone, or sphere, and we know that they all have this circle in common, where this is going to be our capital B, is right here. We're going to say capital B. And in this case, we're going to talk about the circle. Okay? And I want you to draw a circle, and I want you to fill it in, because we're not talking about the line that goes around the circle. We're talking about actually finding the area. Capital B is going to be pi r squared in this case. And let's go down and figure out in our cylinder in our volume, where do we see capital B? Let's draw an arrow to it right here. We see it right there. We see it right here also. So when we're finding the volume of a cylinder or a cone, we're going to need to use pi r squared wherever we see capital B. Now when we get to do sphere, we don't need that. We don't need that. We only need that for prism and cylinder. Let's write the formulas down for each of these. For the volume of a cylinder. So we're going to put your finger on volume, go down to cylinder and go over. Leave your finger there while you write the formula for the volume of a cylinder underneath the cylinder here. Volume equals area of the base times the height line. Okay? And lightly shade in, if you would, lightly shade in the area of the base to illustrate, and then put an arrow to capital B. The area of the base is here. We're finding the area of the base, simply the shaded part. And then your height line is here. Okay? It's like we're just figuring out what is the area of the bottom of the cylinder, and then we're filling it up by using the height line. Okay? 6 feet. All right, let's go to cone. So for cone, we're going to come down here to volume. Here's the formula for cone. Let's write that underneath here. Volume equals 1/3 area of the base times the height line. And once again, I just want you to lightly shade in the area of the base, the circle here that we need to calculate. We need to calculate what is the area of this base. And we're going to draw an arrow down to capital B, because that's what we're finding. We're finding the shaded area of the base. Then we're going to multiply in the height line. Let's draw an arrow over here. And then we're going to cut it into thirds. We cut it into thirds because it's 1/3 of an actual cylinder with the same dimensions. A cone is 1/3 of a cylinder with the same dimensions. That's why that formula calls for 1/3. Okay, for sphere. Let's try sphere. So sphere is here. Put our finger over here, and let's put our finger on it while we write the formula. Volume equals 4/3 times pi times my radius to the power of 3. Okay? This is where we're going to need that caret button, that little house button in your calculator. We're going to need that here. All right. So let's go back to the cylinder. What is the shape of the base of the cylinder again? Circle. So I want you to write circle. And I want you to write the formula for the area of a circle, which we already identified as pi r squared. That's right up here. Remember, we said we're going to have to use that anytime we see capital B. We're going to substitute pi r squared. And then we're going to substitute h. We're going to substitute a 6 here because the height is 6. And as soon as we substitute it, we're going to cross it out. Okay, I want to put that number in first. Okay, what's the next number we need to find to put in our formula? The radius. That's right. We gotta substitute the radius in here. So let's draw an arrow down. What's our radius? Do we have it, or do we need to take that 4 and cut it in half? That's right. We want to cut it in half. So let's illustrate that by crossing it out and writing a 2, and then let's just bold just the radius part, which is from the center of the circle to the outside edge. And let's write r equals 2. H equals 6. Those are our variables that we have to go find. All right. So we're going to substitute the 2 here. Make sure you don't forget about your pi. We have to square that 2, and we have to multiply it times 6. All right, so we're just going to put this in our calculator. Remember, you have a pi button. So we're just going to click pi, select it, multiply it times 2. Need my x squared button comes into play. And then we're going to multiply that times 6. And we're going to get our total volume, which is 75.3982. Okay, now we're most often going to be asked to round to the nearest hundreds. So let's remember Y'all remember which one of these is the hundredths position? Yes, it is the 9. It is the pennies, because there's 100 pennies in a dollar. It's the pennies position. So you're going to underline the 9, circle the 8, and draw an arrow back. Now, is that 8 big enough?
Yes.
It's big enough. So what's going to happen? If we're just going up by 1 penny, if I go from 39 up 1 penny, where do I wind up at?
40.
That's right. I wind up at 40. So if I'm going to round it, I got to say, not only is my 9 going to change, but my 3 also. 75.40. And in this case, it's feet cubed because we're talking about volume. Okay? Now there's 2 places I want you to put V equals. One is where you have the total. The other one is where you have the formula with the radius in it properly. Okay, so we're going to put a box around here. That's one possible answer choices. Half of your questions are just going to be like this, half of your answer choices. The other half are going to ask you to actually put it in your calculator and solve it. Okay? But in the 8th grade STAR, these are the 2 possible answer choices. They're going to ask you to take that radius and put it in the proper place, or they're going to ask you to just tell me the total and round it. Okay? Possibly even grid it, because this is a very griddable question. Let's jump to cone. Okay? What's similar about these 2 scenarios here? What is the shape of the base?
Circle.
Yeah, they're both circles. So I know under capital B, I'm going to write the word circle. And I'm going to use that same formula for a circle, pi r squared. The first thing I want you to do out of this figure is get which number?
8.
I want you to get the h. And once you use it, I want you to cross it out. So let's bring it in here. And as you're doing all this, you cannot forget your 1/3, because without your 1/3 is going to be an easy answer choice. Okay. Now we got to get my radius. Do I have my radius, or do I need to cut that 4 in half?
You have the radius.
I have my radius because it's simply from the center of the circle to the outside edge. That's the length that I need. I'm going to draw an arrow to show that I'm substituting that right here underneath the radius is going to be 4. I'm going to square it. I don't forget my pi button. Can't forget my 1/3. And I can't forget my height line, which is 12. Okay, those are the pieces that I've got to remember to put in. And just like I did the last time, since this radius is, I got the proper radius in the proper formula, this is an answer choice. There are 2 ways they say in the TEAC how to test it. Take the radius and put it in the formula properly, or let's go ahead and calculate that all the way out. I'm going to take Control divide to be able to put in my 1 as my numerator, 3 as my denominator. I'm going to page right. Times, bring in my pi button, times 4x squared. Okay, don't stop here because you got one more, you got your height line, you got to make sure that you tell it how tall it is, times 12. Okay, so make sure, double check and make sure you haven't missed anything. Double check. And now you can round it out to 201.062. Now this time, let's round to the nearest tenth. Which number, if I wanted to change 10 cents at a time, which number would change? That's the pennies. That's the 100. That's pennies at a time. The 0 is if I want to change 10 cents at a time. That's why it's called the tenths. So we're going to underline that. Let's circle the number after. Is that 6 big enough to turn that 0 into a 1?
Yes.
Okay. So if that 0 becomes a 1, what happens after the 1?
0, 0.
Yeah. And most often you can just go to the, just like you're doing money, just stop after the 100th position. Don't forget your 201. And there is your second possible answer choice on this problem. Okay? They're going to ask you this question, They're going to give you a cone, and these are going to be your answer choices, and these are going to be your answer choices. One of the two. And that's why I tell you it's so important to follow the steps. Start with the sentence with the question in it, and then look at your answer choices so you know. Do you actually have to solve for volume, or do you just have to go create the formula? It's going to be one of those two. All right, the sphere is the last one. I think this is the easiest one. Anybody have any idea why I think it's the easiest one? Yeah, it just has a radius. There is no capital B because really it's not considered a base because it's inside the object. So we just have to go find the radius. Is that 12 my radius, do you think, or do I need to cut that in half? Amen. I need to cut that in half. I want you to write 6 here and cross this out so we don't get confused. And let's put the radius as 6 on the shelf. And I'm ready to go. Okay? So equals 4 over 3. Do not forget your pi button. Let's substitute in our radius is 6. And one of the most often things also, guys, is that you get to this point, you're so often used to say pi r squared, pi r squared, pi r squared. You have to remember on sphere that this guy has to be taken to the power of 3. Okay? And you're gonna find that because they love to put this as an answer choice and put that exponent as a 2. Okay? That's why it's so important to follow the steps. Look at the object. Go to your reference material guide. Write the formula down. Go get your dimensions that you need and put them in the formula. From there, you're home free. It's just a matter of putting it in your calculator properly. All right, control divide to get my fraction. In this case, my 4 is my numerator and 3 is my denominator. On page right, and I've got my pi times 6. And remember, I need this button right here to get to the power of whatever I want to get to. Okay, in this case, it's to the power of 3. It's going to show up just like that. I'll substitute a 3 in there and hit enter. 904.779. Okay? So if I'm rounding this time to the nearest whole 1, if I'm rounding to the nearest whole 1, which one of these is $1 at a time? It's going to change at $1 at a time. The 4, that's right. So I'm going to underline the 4. I'm going to circle the 7 after it and draw an arrow back. Is that big enough to change the 4? Yeah, so what's it going to become? 905. And that would be my volume in centimeters cubed. Okay? And so that's it. So your 3 objects that you're responsible for are cylinder, cone, and volume. Be sure that you write the formula down before you take the next step. Be sure that you use pi r squared for the base whenever you have the base of a circle. And be sure that you can get that radius in the formula properly and round, and you're done. Okay? So raise your hand if you have any questions, and I'll come around and help you individually. Great job.